When you dare to share, you break the silence. When you dare to share, you speak your truth. When you dare to share, you use the full strength of your voice. When you dare to share, it brings opportunity to own your story. So tell it, be heard, and at the same time, your sharing is someone else's learning, inspiration, motivation, empowerment, and hope. There's always an element to each of our stories that remains a secret. For some, we feel it's a dirty little secret. Dare to share your untold story exposes these secrets in a welcoming and positive way. I encourage each of you out there to dare yourself to share what is yours to tell. When we dare, it is the courage to do something really important. Let this be a vow to each and every single one of us that we take risk, we brave, confront, and face what is, while inspiring and empowering all communities. So let's break that silence and tap into mental beauty. This is Salima Jadavji, your podcast host, a practicing clinical social worker, and your mental wellness connoisseur. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast, episode number 35, Traumatically Segregated on Multiple Levels Due to Her Divergent Personality. To all my fellow listeners, before we get started, I'm just dropping in a note to give you a heads up that this podcast might be emotionally triggering for you. We do invite guests onto the show who share openly about extremely difficult life moments with exposure and impact of what the struggles have been like. The intensity of each episode could have a variable impact on your emotional and mental well-being based on your own personal story. If at any point the topic becomes uncomfortable or upsetting to you in any way, please do not pressure yourself to listen. Instead, be kind to yourself, do some self-care, and perhaps give another episode a try. Today, I have the great pleasure of introducing our amazing, daring guest, Karima Jaffer. Karima is an innovator and spark builder and knowledge enthusiast. She is currently completing a Master of Social Work degree at the University of Toronto's Factor Inwentosh Faculty of Social Work. She has been inspired to pursue this field because of personal experiences with inequity regarding her family who dealt with ageism and classism. Prior to her Master of Social Work endeavor, Karima worked in the business sector as a business strategist. Her roles encompassed areas of human resources, finance, and project coordination. She enjoyed the mentorship opportunities that she gained, allowing her to see and experience various leadership styles across numerous settings. Her passion for social justice has inspired her to initiate projects in the areas of mental health education, financial literacy, and female youth empowerment. Outside of her professional experiences, Karima is a caregiver to an elderly father who has early onset dementia and is the only family member fluent in English. During her free time, Karima volunteers in the community, explores with her friends, and engages in artistic modalities such as visual art, poetry, music, and writing her own blog. A fun fact about Karima is that she is an avid Amazon shopper. Well, hello there, Karima. Welcome to the Dare to Share Your Untold Story podcast.
Hi.
Hello. What a great pleasure it is to be able to have you on as a guest on the show today. I am really thankful that you're here today, that we're going to chat today. I'm really grateful that you're so open and willing and courageous to be here sharing your story today. I also can't thank you enough for your support, just being able to take a stance with me in my quest to help break barriers of mental stigma. So thank you, Karima.
Thank you for having me.
So, Karima, in case you're still wondering, this podcast is about bringing forward untold stories that people go through, whether it is about a mental health struggle directly or if it's related to something else. What we know about people's journeys and difficult moments is that no matter what their story is, whether it's directly about mental health or not, there is an impact on a person's mental health in some way, and that usually remains unexpressed. It stays tucked away. So the platform that I have created here is a way to break those barriers of mental stigma that primarily have been conditioned in our society. So I'm really hoping that conversations like today's conversation. I really, really hope it's going to continue to encourage people and inspire people and empower people to tap in and dare themselves to share and tell what, people don't really always want to unveil. So I'm also bringing forward a trend, and it's called the mental beauty rethink. Karima, what comes to mind for you when you hear mental beauty?
Ooh, I think of mental beauty products.
What's that? Tell me about mental beauty products.
Well, when you think of mental health, you think about it so formally, right? You think of
Mm-hmm.
doctors, medicine, psychiatrists,
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. But when you think about mental beauty and you think about, I guess, what's usually used when you apply makeup and so forth, you use different products. You use eyeshadow, lipstick, and so forth, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess glamming up your face.
Mm-hmm.
But in a similar sense, mental beauty, you have a support system.
Mm-hmm.
You need, I guess, a routine,
Mm-hmm.
therapy,
Mm-hmm.
modalities that can help you succeed. And at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, you need yourself. So that's what comes up. Sorry, that's what comes up in my mind.
I never thought of it from the angle of mental beauty products. Like what a really neat way of coining it. But you're right. But you make a good point, and I think further to that, it's physical health, sometimes ailments, it's things that we can see. Mental health, they're not necessarily ailments that we can see all the time, and there's definitely different things that we can use, products that we can use to anchor that part of our well-being. So I really enjoyed hearing about how you came to this term of mental beauty products. I like it. Lady Karima, are you all set for our daring questions?
I'm so ready.
Okay, give us the newspaper headline of how you would title your untold story. What would it say?
It would be in bright flashing lights. Life
Flashing
spin.
lights.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how you know it's real.
Okay, all right.
Life spin. Service provider to user.
Life spend, service provider to user?
Yeah.
Tell me more about this headline.
So currently I'm studying my Master's of Social Work at the University of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I've held numerous practicum positions,
Mm-hmm.
such as at Sunnybrook Hospital in the Reactive Care Center and
Mm-hmm.
COVID ICU unit, as well as Michael Garron Hospital's Transitional Youth Program. So
Okay.
a lot of service providing right over there,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the areas of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, now I'm in the other end of things.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of being the provider, I'm the user.
So you are now using the services.
Hmm.
I guess this is really a nice way to uncover your untold story. So tell me what it's all about.
So it began all when I was when I was a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I was always known as a sensitive kid. What I mean by that is I experienced immense bullying in both my cultural community as well as my educational community,
Mm-hmm.
based on not just like my physical appearance, but also the way I thought. And that would really impact me whenever I would experience these overwhelming emotions I have, and it would lead to, I guess, how I view myself in terms of self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually it followed me all the way until my adulthood, which is when I first got diagnosed. And when you think diagnoses, you go, doctors know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But this one clearly did not. When expanding on this, I remember I was 22 years old and I was completing my undergrad at Ryerson.
Okay.
And I had a lot of life changes. I lost my best friend, I lost a community, and I was going through a lot of traumatic instances. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling like immense high emotions and immense low emotions. And then all out of nowhere, like I started believing that I had magical powers and I could like read people's minds and such.
Mm-hmm.
That was gifted to me by my spiritual leader.
And so what happened then? Like, uh, when you started to experience these highs and lows, did it lead you? I think I heard you mention that you did seek medical attention, but it wasn't a good experience. Can you say more? Is this the time that you went to see your doctor?
Yeah, I was a doctor on campus.
Mm-hmm.
like the stigma there is, like, I mean, especially when it comes to boundaries, my parents and I shared the same family doctor, so I didn't feel comfortable in going to her, so I saw a GP on campus.
Okay.
When I expressed, what I was feeling, and with the limited questions he was asking me, because, psychiatrists have this long intake process, which they have, which GPs unfortunately don't.
Mm-hmm.
He took out two scales and asked me to rate them out of 10. One was for depression and one was for anxiety.
And so, what happened with the results? Like, what did the doctor say?
He diagnosed me for major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder.
And are you, from what I'm alluding from what you shared before, are you saying that, were you referencing that this was a misdiagnosis?
Yeah, definitely it was.
How did you come to know about it? What happened next?
So, because of this diagnosis, the doctor prescribed me sertraline, which is an SSRI.
Yep.
It's basically known as a happy drug. And for 6 years, I took that happy drug, and then my brain could not take it anymore, which led me in going into a psychotic manic episode.
And how long ago was that?
It was this past February
Of this year.
of yeah, February 2021.
Wow.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. And so, can you describe this episode?
Yeah, I can. So what I recall, so the thing about psychosis is, sometimes you remember your episodes fully, and other times you have a lot of blanks.
Mm-hmm.
I had many blanks.
Okay.
What I recall is that I started becoming very confident. To be honest, like, prior to this episode, I was learning to be confident in therapy, work through, I guess, my past experiences. However, like, suddenly I started becoming more confident and more artistic.
Now, is this the time when you felt you had the magical powers that you referred to, or was that earlier?
This is the second time, so in February.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
I started experiencing this, and all of a sudden, I, start hearing voices. In particular, it was my spiritual leader and his daughter, who I've never heard before.
Okay.
Like, I've never heard her voice, which was super weird.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere, I started believing that I was the next spiritual leader of my community, and I started having random, you know, theories in my mind, like such as, like, there are 13 special women out there who will lead the community, or like, my mother was a devil. My dad wasn't didn't have dementia. He was actually, like, in disguise. I
Mm-hmm.
also pictured myself seeing Jesus
Okay.
playing a flute, and I also thought I was getting married to a guy I had a crush on. But the worst part is the fact that I publicized this on social media.
And so, what happened next?
Oh, I started planning my wedding. Yeah, I started making WhatsApp groups, one for bridal wear, one for makeup, one for music,
Mm-hmm.
and I started, like, going all out. That my family members across the globe were, very concerned. At the same time, they didn't know if it was real or not, because when you're going through psychosis, like, a lot of people think it's you're providing factual information.
Mm-hmm.
So on Instagram, I started posting everything. On LinkedIn, I started posting that I got into the UN. Um, and then next thing you know, I'm emailing my professors. And the good thing is the fact that I have a very strong faculty who knows me personally, because I'm a student leader. So they connected me to a psychiatrist on campus, told me to seek attention at CAMH.
And what was the experience like for you at CAMH?
Oh, I don't remember the first time at all, because I
That
was,
was one of the blank moments.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I just remember, like, being in the ER and then waking up in a room.
Wow. So, like, I'm curious about so many things, but I'm also curious about, what emotions were coming up for you then? Like, I know you said you were having highs and lows, but when you were having your lows, what did those look like? Like, were you aware of what sort of emotions you were experiencing? Like, um, did you have supports at the time, as you said, people around the globe were expressing concern? Did anyone help guide your process before your school, or anyone that was supportive of your journey once you were starting the process with CAMH? Do you remember any of that?
So everyone was pretty out of it, but at the same time, they just went with the flow with me, the people who I still have, because when I went through this episode, I lost a lot of my community.
What do you mean you lost a lot of your community?
So we see mental health as mental beauty.
Like you and me.
Yeah, you and
Okay.
I.
Yes.
But other people see it as being ugly ducklings.
Okay.
Like, I mean, there's so many people who I thought would, you know, be aware about mental illness, and like, if on social media, if I don't, like, I mean, I know myself as a person, and a lot of folks who I know on there who I barely speak to, they were just like, we had a feeling something was going on, so that's why, we wanted to like reach out to you if something was up. But other folks, like, who knew me,
Right.
like, thought I was, quote unquote, went nuts. And it was unfortunate to see that that was the outcome, and these were the people who I held close to me.
Did they ever come to know and recognize and realize that you were going through a bout of psychosis?
So after the episode, I felt immense shame.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I was messaging the people who I remembered that
Mm-hmm.
I impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and went, hey, I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder. It was a psychotic episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, a few people were like very supportive, while the rest were just like, you are too much to handle. So I blocked you. One was also like, don't speak to me again because um, you're crazy. So that led me in, you know, logging out of Instagram for 5 months because I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
It sounds like it was a really isolating experience.
It really was like I had like a few like I had really good friends around me, to be honest, but
Mm-hmm.
um after the thing is, when I came out of psychosis, the doctors were so eager in letting me go home
Mm-hmm.
that they failed to educate me on what I was going through. I did not that I was going to get cognitive deficits where my executive functions such as speaking, thinking, doing would, you know, disappear or like, become trapped under a door. And when I went home, when I experienced such things, because I mean, I was finishing my last semester, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to school, but all of a sudden I couldn't think anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a 4.0 GPA student and an
Right.
eager go-getter.
Right. You have a go-getter attitude and you are a knowledge enthusiast. So for you to not be able to learn or to sit there with your books, that must have been really tough.
It was heartbreaking for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's part of
And
your
then
identity, right?
part of my identity, part of who I am as a
Mm-hmm.
person, my culture,
Mm-hmm.
the hard work that my parents, um, you know, they experienced when coming up with financial stability for me to go to grad school and pursue education as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a failure to them, even though they were saying the exact opposite.
You couldn't take it in with whatever feedback you were receiving.
Hmm.
And so, did you feel like you got support from your immediate family?
Okay, so as I mentioned, my dad has early onset dementia, and
Mm-hmm.
he's also bedridden. So my mom doesn't speak much English. My dad, like, luckily does speak a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so all the since he wasn't feeling well, like every responsibility fell on me, and it didn't make it easier, going through a new diagnosis of bipolar disorder, bipolar one. Yeah, and on top of that, like, my mom, she's not that educated with mental health, and she thinks her family, everyone around me in my family thinks just being positive will make it all better, which is not true at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of the term toxic positivity?
Oh, I preach it every day.
Tell our listeners about toxic positivity. I think people need to know.
Okay. So toxic positivity is when someone tells you to change your mindset to positivity when without knowing the external and internal factors of what's going through. Like, for example, telling someone to be positive when they're upset or or they're facing depression, and it's just like you can't flip the switch because someone is going through something biologically like altering and chemically altering as well, but at the same time it's emotionally altering.
Yeah, I really feel So my take, everything you're saying is what I know about toxic positivity as well. But I also, and it has a lot to do with mindset. And I also feel like the statements, the examples of how toxic positivity shows up, I feel it's very invalidating. Like failure is not an option. When someone says failure is not an option, or just keep smiling, all right, to your point, or it could be worse. Those are some things that come to mind when I think toxic positivity. And for me, if we were to flip it so that it's not seen as toxic positivity, rather than saying failure is not an option, it would be to say failure is part of growth. Or rather than telling someone just keep smiling, I would want to tell someone it's okay to be upset and even cry, and it only makes you more human. To the comment of, it could be worse. That's so invalidating when you're going through a really tough time. Sometimes we experience bad things. How can I support you? So there's a huge difference in the message. But those are some examples that were coming to my mind to sort of highlight what I heard you share.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, it makes it harder when you come from a cultural family and they are quote unquote very religious to the point where they say, oh, mental illness, that doesn't exist in our religion. People make that up. Or,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's going to go away. Just be positive, it'll go away, which leads
Mm-hmm.
towards gaslighting.
Do you feel like since you've journeyed through all of these various aspects over the last number of months, do you feel like there's been a shift in their perspective?
Definitely. Especially when
Yeah.
it comes to my mom. Basically, long story short, I had a caseworker assigned to me by a leader within the Smiley community,
Okay.
who didn't do the best job, I guess, explaining what bipolar disorder was for my mom. So she
Mm-hmm.
had a different definition. However, when I went back to CAMH the second time, I had a doctor. I want to give her a shout out.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jane, if you're listening.
Okay, Dr.
um,
Jane.
Dr. Jane. And
Mm-hmm.
she was also from the South Asian community.
Mm-hmm.
So she, not insisted, but she made me feel comfortable in knowing that she could have a conversation with my mom about this and explain it to her in a way where it does get through her. And that's what happened. Like, this doctor went out of the way to tell my mom about what bipolar disorder was, what you need to excel and succeed, what things not to say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it
Mm-hmm.
really opened up her mind in some way. But at the same time, she still has those toxic traits.
Well, habits and things that have been ingrained, that they do take a long time to shift, but it seems like she was open to learning from what you're sharing,
Mhm.
right? And do you feel like she's showing up a little differently?
Oh yeah, she
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Must feel good. Maybe not so much nice, but must feel good to receive support that's meaningful to you in a way that's helpful to you.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's helpful to. So basically, I've noticed is like, she'll be okay when she's around me or my best friend, but then
Mm-hmm.
when like I know it's not her fault. It's social
Mm-hmm.
influence too when the entire community gets involved and they
Right.
start going, "There's a cure out there, it's called prayer,"
Right.
and then it becomes altered. But luckily, I've gotten to the point where I have like really like close knit of friends who are like siblings to me and
Mm-hmm.
mentors that I look up to that have made me realize that like my
It's the
say is
most
big.
important. Yes.
Exactly,
Yes. It's the
exactly.
most important one.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm hearing you talk about all these things that you were going through and how isolating it was and having to sort of fend for yourself with the cultural and religious beliefs and the toxic positivity and, you know, people wanting to support but not really knowing how to support, or their version of support was really unhelpful. That must have been a really lonely time for you. How did that take a toll on you? Like, what was the internal process like for you?
The internal process consisted of so much anger.
Yeah.
I was so angry.
Yeah. Lots of anger. Karima, in a private conversation that we had, you mentioned that there was a point where you were entertaining thoughts of harming yourself. Can you speak to that today?
I can. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
So, The thoughts began as soon as I came out of the hospital in February.
Mm-hmm.
And I started noticing the cognitive impairments.
So what sort of thoughts were you having, if it's okay to ask?
You're a failure. You do
Mm-hmm.
not deserve to live.
So put downs.
Yeah, a lot of put
Yeah.
downs, and
The inner critic, she seemed loud.
definitely she seemed very loud.
Okay.
The inner critic and the coach critic, like, get your shit together, you know, like.
Yeah.
But you
Right.
can't get your shit together if you're going to chronic depression.
Yeah. Right. It's like asking someone, to tie their shoelaces with two fingers
Mm-hmm.
from the same hand while your other hand is, you know, handcuffed to a bar, right? Like you're asking someone to do something that's just not feasible. So tell me more about these thoughts. Like, did you ever have thoughts to want to harm yourself, or were these just thoughts of your, like, more passive thoughts telling you like you don't deserve to live, you shouldn't be here? Like, was it like a thought that, I guess what I'm asking is, was it like a critic telling you, like your inner critic telling you, like you're not worthy and you don't deserve to live, or did you actually feel and believe it yourself?
I believed it and I lived it.
Hmm.
I had 5 suicide attempts.
5 suicide attempts.
Mm-hmm. And one
Wow.
five suicide attempts with
Wow.
plans. Yeah, which
Mhm.
I tried succeeding in. A few self-harm moments.
I really can't imagine what that would have been like. What sort of pain you were going through to get to that place of feeling that you had to give up like that. What's coming up for you right now as we talk about this?
It makes me like think, it's like, wow, like, when I think about myself as a service user and someone going through a vulnerable population, it's like, wow, like, I went through that. Like, it's like I would I would tell my clients to speak so compassionately to themselves. Not tell them to encourage them to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then during that time, it's like I could not be compassionate at all.
But somehow you're here. You didn't, those attempts didn't succeed. You're here. So, Karima, what else happened on your in this journey and on this path of learning about your diagnosis and getting the more accurate diagnosis? What else is in your story that we haven't unpacked today or uncovered?
For sure. So this past month, I went to CAMH 4 times, 2 hospitalizations, and the other 2 times was going to the ER and the clinic. So when I was in deep depression, going back to the cognitive deficits, I kept being told by professionals and people to conduct CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yep.
And being a professional myself, I'm just like, yeah, I don't need that shit right now.
Mm-hmm. You have to be in a certain mind space to be able to really operate in a way to let that modality help you, because you're talking about regulating your thoughts and your mood and your behavior. And so you have to be in a space to have the motivation has to be there. And I don't mean like laziness. I mean, like, I think sometimes people think that when you're in a depressive episode that you're lazy, and I don't think it's laziness. I think they're like very difficult tasks that your body is not able to do. So if your body can't function and cope, I think that it can be limiting for how that modality can help you. I hear what you're saying.
However, what was happening during this journey was that I was taking an antipsychotic, which led to my prolactin levels to increase. And in order to like get them down, I had to take this medicine prescribed by an endocrinologist. However, as flawed as the healthcare system is, this doctor was not aware about the side effects that would lead me in going into a manic episode. Mental health is not a part of health in many places.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through a manic episode,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which led me in going to psychosis afterwards again. But this time, it saved my life. I was able to start thinking again. I felt like the roadblock I had between my thoughts was gone. I was able to um, speak properly, think deeper. When I was hospitalized again at CAMH, I was in their child and youth unit, which is fabulous. I was able to meet people my age, around my
Mm-hmm.
age, who are going through similar struggles, as well as, I was able to play ping pong. And ping pong, executive functioning, like ping pong really helps with that, or playing games. And so I was able to, like, find myself again in a way, but a newer version.
A renewed Karima.
Exactly. Like a battery.
That's a really lovely outcome to have after going through all of those difficulties and the strife and struggle and hardship. Karima, when people come to see me for therapy, these individuals, people are typically in one of three places, right? So sometimes people are, and I don't mean like, just they're in three places in terms of life. I mean, like with the issues or the hardships that they're coming to sort of unpack or uncover, sometimes people are they're getting started, they're ready to work on something and they have no idea how to start and they need help with that. Some people are really in the middle, like in the thick of it, and they need to figure out where to go and how to go and what's the next step. And some people are looking back, and some people are looking back as they're trying to get closure, or they're trying to introspect, or find a way to get some sort of insight or different perspective so they can move forward, or they're looking to figure out how to take the lessons and learnings and bring that into their awareness so that they can become better versions of themselves as they move forward. Where would you say that you are in your journey? Would you say that you're in the beginning, the middle, or looking back?
Oh, I'm in all three.
You're in all three. How so?
To add about the bipolar disorder, I also got diagnosed recently with borderline personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But except for the mental diagnoses, every day I, find someone who may or not be a part of my community anymore, or a new addition.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I experience a different part of my routine,
Mm-hmm.
which can be a positive or negative on my mental health. But then I remind myself, like, I got to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
because, I it feels like I came back from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, nope, I got to keep going. And even though I'm taking steps backwards, where it feels like I'm going back to the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
I know I can push through again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like time is fluid. It's like a river as well, where you're having waves and then you have a tidal wave, except instead of going forward, the tidal wave can go backwards.
That's a that's an interesting take. I think the river and the waves and the tidal wave and moving backwards, that's a helpful way of explaining it. What would you say are there other things that have come up for you that have allowed you to be grateful with encountering this journey?
Yeah, it has taught me a lot, actually. When I was in the child and youth unit, I had a great staff member, because you have assigned staff to you, so like your own fairies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one, or very like, she encouraged me to get a gratitude journal. So I started one there. The first thing I wrote was that I'm grateful for my diagnoses, because I'm able to see the world in such a new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It also taught me to also write down and reflect on being grateful about not who I have in my life, but also how important it is to cherish yourself. At,
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, if you have suicidal thoughts, you don't shame yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going through shit.
No more shaming.
Yeah, no
No
more
more shaming.
shaming.
Right.
We have to
Only self
we,
love.
exactly, but we have to
Mm-hmm.
normalize suicide too. We have to
Mm-hmm.
normalize so much out there that's stigmatized, and
Mm-hmm.
lived experience is experience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Like, put that on your resume.
Yeah. Lived experience is the best kind. You are the experience. You've lived it. You know for certain what it's about from all angles. So I want to ask, I usually like to ask and inquire from people, and I think you've already started to share this, but I have a few more curiosities along this line. I usually like to ask people about how their untold story has affected, the overall mental health for someone. And so for you, I think my curiosity is, I guess, in terms of the suicidality, like I know you had these 5 attempts that you talked about, right? And you really were making attempts to succeed. Like, I guess I'm curious about what helped you to not go through with it, or what helped to save you.
So some reasons were that I'll not succeed in the life for the life I want.
Mm-hmm.
Like losing my executive functioning, it impacted me so much that no one was understanding what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason was that I lost a lot of people in my community, and
Mm-hmm.
that I had become this blob. The third reason was that no one was understanding what I was going through, and they were undermining my experiences.
Mm-hmm. And what did that feel like for you?
I felt I felt defeated, especially because when you have your executive functioning, and when you're a social work student, you're an advocate, you're someone who's just into so much social justice work, that when you're in that zone, you're able to advocate for yourself and others. But
Mm-hmm.
when you feel like a blob or a vegetable, and like in my opinion, like you lose that function too, because the words you need aren't there, and the people who you need to advocate for you are not advocating for you at all. They think they can make the best decisions for you when you're the one who knows yourself best.
Do you feel like sometimes people were making decisions for you based on their own worries and anxieties, so it make them feel better, but maybe not necessarily so good for you?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. I can tell you. I have one good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm an Ismaili Muslim,
Okay.
and we have an organization called the Council of Ontario.
Okay.
So without my permission, my mother was speaking to a leader in the community,
Okay.
and they opened up a case file for me.
Oh.
Yeah, a case file for me without my permission. Yeah, and the caseworker that was assigned to me, she knew me. Like she
Oh.
knew me outside of this, professional relationship,
Okay. That's
which
a bit
was,
of a conflict.
yeah, boundaries, right? What made it even worse was that I wasn't able to choose my worker, especially when I interviewed her myself afterwards. I was like, okay, I don't want to, brag. I don't want to brag or anything, but I'm way more qualified than you are.
Right.
So what made me even more frustrated was that my mother was speaking to her about me without me being aware, and they
Right.
were creating plans for me.
Right. It's one thing to talk about concerns and trying to figure out how to help and support you, but to make all these plans for you, that's a different level of, that's a different sort of boundary violation.
When I would state that, hey, I have a great team already at CAMH and CMHA,
Right.
I don't need you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, what's your key message to the listeners of our show, Karima?
That, like when you want to speak, when you have a thought that you really think is necessary to mention, do it.
Mm-hmm,
And if it's in in any emotion possible, if it's anger or worry, or you feeling defeated, like express that.
mm-hmm,
Express it, because you have these emotions. Use them as tools. Use them as mental beauty tools.
mm-hmm. We're using it right in conversation. I like it.
And
So,
selling your product.
you're selling the products, right? So what your message here so far, what I'm hearing is that when you want to speak, do it. Express whatever your emotion is, um, and use your emotions as signals to communicate what's going on the inside, like the internal process.
Definitely.
Any other messages for the listeners?
You get to choose who you want on your team, and then make sure that you're on it. And people say there's no I in team, but that's not true at all, because you're the I.
You need to be on your own team,
Yeah.
and it's not your team if you're not on it. So tell me about something that was a game changer inspiration for you, that's close to you, that's connected to you, that reflects your untold story. Is there like a quote, a book, a mantra, an event, a person, a place, something that really sort of resonates for you that you can share?
Yeah, there's a quote.
Mm-hmm.
It's speed doesn't matter. Forward is forward.
Speed doesn't matter, forward is forward. All right, and who is the lovely author of this quote?
The quote was gifted to me by Farah Kimani. She's a soul sister.
A soul sister. Okay. A
Yeah.
soul sister gifting you such a lovely, what a lovely phrase. Speed doesn't matter, forward is forward.
It was so great that I got it tattooed on my skin.
You did?
I did.
That's awesome. Okay. So, what's a cause or organization that you want to give a shout out to?
Stella's Place.
Stella's Place. What's your connection to Stella's Place?
Oh, okay. So after I finished undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
the social worker I had at school connected me towards Stella's Place for Services. It was the first mental health community I was a part of as a young adult. Not just a young adult, like as a person ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It introduced me to everything, and then I later became a youth board of director.
Youth board of director?
Yeah.
Nice. Are you still a youth board of director?
I am not.
But you were at the time.
Yeah.
And that was the first community that you really felt that you belonged to.
It was indeed.
Mm-hmm. That's a really nice thing to hear. So shout out to Stella's Place for sure. And if people want to connect with you, how can they? What are your handles?
Okay, so the first one is my private account. It's at KHARISMAA ____.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is at Art by Charisma. So whatever that was included in the first handle, including the 3 signs.
Okay. We will have all of this on the show notes. So it's at Karima with 3 underscores.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you're findable on what platforms?
Oh, sorry. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
I just got so excited to promote myself. Instagram. And
Instagram?
I'm also on LinkedIn, and it's just my name.
Okay, amazing. Okay, Miss Karima, guess what?
What?
You've just dared yourself to share. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm so proud of myself.
Absolutely. Always be proud of yourself. Today was definitely a big chat, a big conversation, a really large unveiling. And I am actually so thankful for your courage and your bravery today to be part of this podcast, to journey us all through your journey. You shared very openly about some very intense circumstances that you have been through, and some of the most difficult aspects of your life's journey you fully unveiled today. So I really cannot express enough how grateful I am to have witnessed the telling of your story. So thank you for taking us deep and working through some raw moments. And of course, for all the daring and sharing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It is my pleasure. And once again, Karima, thank you for being part of Dare to Share Your Untold Story and helping to be a voice in breaking down the barriers of mental stigma. To all of our listeners, if you like what you've been hearing on this podcast and you want to be part of breaking down barriers of mental stigma, I invite you to go wherever you are listening to the episode and hit subscribe. Leave us a comment or a review of the episode and maybe how you relate to it. To learn more about what we offer, visit www.daretoheal.co. And if you are feeling ready and brave to share, please submit your story by visiting www.daretoshare.co. Thanks for joining in.